one of the things we want to do on this show is bring people working in the Bitcoin space here in El Salvador, and which will help, because I know some of the audience, many of you are new to Bitcoin, many of you are very knowledgeable, but as the price just cracked 67,000 today, it is now at 67,300 some, as we just checked CoinDesk earlier before the show started. I want to bring a lot of people on the show to explain all of the cool different things that people can be doing and all the work that's being done here, specifically in El Salvador. And hopefully, if those of you who are new to the space will be like, oh, wow, this is cool. Because I know a lot of you, the people that are really knowledgeable, you know, you get it, you're excited, you know, the halving's coming, you're like, man, we're going to break the all-time high maybe during this broadcast, who knows. Those of you who are kind of new to the space are like, wow, what's going on? What's a halving? What's a wallet? Blah, blah, blah. So today we're going to get into like what wallets are and what the importance of them and the significance of them are. And we're going to do that with our guest, who runs the Bitcoin hardware store in El Zonte, and he is Ronny. Ronny, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Graham. I really appreciate it.
It's great having you on the show. We met. I mean, this is the Bitcoin community. So I met Sandy Waves when I first came down here in June and started to meet Bitcoiners, and so when I knew I was going to come down for several months, I'm like, I need to rent a car. And that's how we met. And I tell people I'm renting my car with Bitcoin, which is pretty awesome. And as we, we're talking and you told me about the Bitcoin hardware store, which I was at a couple of weeks ago. Really cool. And you're going to sell hardware wallets. But for the audience, before we get into what the story is and what the wallets are, I always want to know everybody's orange pill journey. Because we all have, very few people just like, oh, I learned about Bitcoin and that was it. I got it. I bought it. You know, there's some sort of superhero type origin story. You know what I mean? Like you were bitten by a spider, you saw your parents murdered or something. Like there's always some Batman type story involved in that. So tell us everything, because you're Salvadorian, you were living in Canada, now you're down here. Give us your whole journey.
Oh, thanks for having me, Graham. I really appreciate it. So my journey, like you said, is really the origin story, the orange pill story for me. I don't even know where to actually start it from. But I was telling you earlier, I have a bit of a financial background. That's where I went to school. Salvadoran Canadian. So my family originated here from El Salvador. They left during the war, which is a very typical story. And, people coming back now. So I was born in Toronto, went to school in Toronto. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, and just got involved in business, finance, accounting, kind of learning how to run a business. And so the people around me, the people closest to me, were all in that type of industry. That was my network. So I was exposed to what we call the financial market at a very early age. And even at that stage of my life, I always questioned, things like inflation, things just like monetary network. I would ask questions, and the answer to it was always from, my professors was always, that's just the way it is. Why is inflation at 2%? That's just the way it is. And so, I wanted a job, so I just took it for what it was and ran with it. Time goes by. I start visiting El Salvador a little bit more as I got into my young adult life, because there was a really long, it was about 15 years where I didn't come to El Salvador. It was known as being a dangerous place. My family definitely would tell me about the things that were happening here. I would see it. My family would watch Salvadoran news on the daily. And
you still you had family down here?
I had family. Most of my family lives down here. The only ones still in Toronto is my immediate family,
So then during this process, I mean, and it's good you're telling this, because I want the audience to understand, like, this is a very common story of like people in the 80s. So for those who aren't familiar, in the 80s, from 1980 to 1992, there was the Civil War that, of course, the United States government was helping. That's what America does, helps create wars and chaos. And so a lot of Salvadorians left to the United States and Canada and elsewhere.
Yeah.
And everybody still had family down here. So not only were you guys watching the news, but I would imagine you're then speaking to family members about what's happening. And then when the Civil War ended in roughly 92, that's then when the gang violence basically took over. So it's been 4 decades. Nonstop.
Yeah.
And so you were hearing all of these horrifying stories firsthand pretty much, right?
Yeah. I was hearing them. I was seeing them when I started coming to visit again in 2014. I saw some of that stuff. My father, I remember one story, my father going to the supermarket and him getting pretty much like assaulted and coming back home beat up. And I was just like, what happened? And my father at the time, I think he was like late 50s. And so that was common. I remember as a kid seeing people walking around with machetes. That was common. But
wow.
Yeah. That's, I have these like flashbacks, I guess you could say. And it was a small sample size, but it was enough for me to have that imprinted in the back of my head. Yeah.
Move the mic a little closer there.
So that was imprinted into me. But then learning about how the finance system works, when I heard about Bitcoin, it was, I'd say 2016, 2017 was the very first time just being in that network of friends who would talk about finances, trying to up our life, better our life. And I was like, okay, this sounds pretty cool. A decentralized, a monetary network that you can transact with anywhere in the world. And some of the properties about Bitcoin really, going back to thinking of El Salvador, I was like, I remember in 2001 when we dollarized, I remember how we went from the colon to the dollar. And so...
It was 2001 or 2000?
2001.
Wow.
I believe 2001.
Okay.
And I remember even before then having Canadian dollars and having to come here, exchange your Canadian dollars to US dollars and then your US dollars to colones. So you would have to take two steps. So as I'm learning about Bitcoin, and I'm just questioning the system in general, I started thinking, okay, well, you know what? This would be in the back of my head, I was like, this would be a great place where Bitcoin takes away the intermediary. So we fast forward to, let's say, 2017, 2018, I see the bull run and then I see a crash. And at that point, for me, it's just a monetary tool. It's not what I see it as today. It's just a way to make money.
But because you had a finance background and were around finance people, you kind of understood it maybe quicker than...
I say that that's actually what made me not understand it quicker because I was so into that fiat mindset. I remember asking myself in 2016, 2017, Bitcoin has no cash flow. Bitcoin has no dividends. Why would I, that was what was keeping me from probably even going deeper down the rabbit hole because it wasn't that traditional finance system. So I'd say from my personal opinion, that's what kept me probably from getting in earlier than I did. And
which kind of, it tracks in the sense that like you see a lot of these traditional finance people, a lot of them talking heads on CNBC or whatever, even today.
Of course.
But especially back then, we're like, it's a Ponzi, whatever, all saying it's no good because it just butts up against your traditional finance knowledge.
Correct. You're throwing all this, you pay $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to go to school to learn these things, which is the traditional system, the legacy system, let's call it. And so you're taught all these different equations and ratios, and then Bitcoin comes and destroys every single one of them. So that's why I say that it's probably what pushed me back. But my thing has always been just questioning, knowing that I don't know everything. So it got me just to question, what Bitcoin was. And then obviously seeing the bull run going up, I got excited, seeing it go down. But by the time the bear, 2017, 2018, when I saw the price go down again, I'd already been involved in the financial markets for a little bit, probably 4 years, 5 years in that time. And so I knew this is just a cycle, so I didn't study it. I just held it. It was just there. Mm-hmm. I knew I'd bought it and I was like, you know what? I'll wait for the next cycle to see how it does. And then I vividly remember, because me and one of my really good friends from Toronto, someone that I grew up with, when 2019's coming around, the end of the year, and we were both just looking at Bitcoin every day, just like move up, move up, move up. So I start panic buying again. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the moment where Bitcoin hits $1 million. Again, not really understanding the technical aspect, strictly just monetary. Mm-hmm. 2019, and then obviously 2020. We know what happened in 2020. And that was the moment where I would say a lot changed for me, because I had seen Bitcoin and I knew I wanted to come back to El Salvador to spend more time. From 2014 to 2019, I had come back to visit my family. I really enjoyed, even though it wasn't safe, I really enjoyed the country. I enjoyed the culture. I enjoyed how warm people were, how inviting people were, the music, the food, having family that's close to me, having them close to me again. That was what brought me back to El Salvador. And so 2020, the world changes. And my opinion was, well, I'm not having a great time here in Toronto. It's really cold, not just the weather, but the people. So I'm going to go check out, and because of the financial privilege that I had and the knowledge and the history of investing in tools, I had built myself a nice little nest egg where, okay, I can go away for a little while and not have to worry and explore the world a little bit more and quit my corporate America job and focus on, I thought the world was going to end in 2020. So yeah. Why not just go away and really do what I wanted to do, which at that point was be here in Central America, experience the culture, and do something different. So I remember as soon as I told my closest friends, like, listen, I think I'm leaving. I've put my notice in at my job. I'm out of here. And one of my friends sends me this YouTube video of Bitcoin in Zonte, and I see a video of Roman Chimbera paying with Bitcoin in Zonte, and I was like, wait, what's this? People are actually using it in El Salvador, of all places. I'm going there now. So first thing I did was I'm going to Zonte. I'd already been to Zonte before, thanks to my family members. They showed me around to El Tunco, showed me around to Zonte, some of the beautiful beaches. And I really liked the culture and the expat community that I found in Zonte. It was great, a lot of like-minded people.
The first time you were in Zonte, had the Bitcoin circular economy started?
Mm-mm. No, first time I was here, it was just a surf town.
Right.
It was just surfers. And the funny thing I say about the surfers and that culture is I think they're already Bitcoiners. They just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for years, escaping, going to go surf and that lifestyle. You're a surfer, right? Mm-hmm. So I really was attracted to that lifestyle, that culture of chivo, buena onda, and just relaxing and really enjoying the water, the nature. And so I was coming back to Zonte, and then I saw the Bitcoin thing. And so after that price run up and back down again, I was like, okay, cool. This is what, when I first heard about Bitcoin and what it could do, I pictured it in El Salvador, because again, coming from Canada to US dollars to colones, it fixes all that, right? And my family was always doing transactions back and forth. My mom and my dad would send money back to El Salvador, because El Salvador is one of their big GDP is remittances.
Yeah. And
so I saw that in my family. And
to add this to the audience should understand that there's roughly 3 million Salvadorians living in other countries because of the reasons your family left with the civil war and the gang violence. So that, like you say, for people to understand, roughly 3 million people are sending money back into this country. That's a huge cash flow, and enter Bitcoin.
Correct. So when I see that Bitcoin is this monetary value that allows you to send final settlement from one place to the next at low cost, the first thing I thought about was my mom could save so much money not having to use Western Union, not having to use the traditional systems, because I know in the back of my mind, all they're doing is pressing a button so that it goes from one account to the next. And they're charging large fees. And so I get here, I see what's happening in I think it was 2021 by the time I actually landed. It was March 3rd. So it's just over 3 years now. It was March 3rd, 2021 when I finally landed. And I wanted to see what this whole Bitcoin thing was. And I see places accepting Bitcoin. I didn't even know what Lightning was at the time. So I just know Bitcoin layer 1, final settlements. Okay, this is cool. I really want to explore a little bit more of this. And I'm just going to be, just hanging back, doing some day trading or swing trading, whatever, because that was my background. And I land in Zonte. I see what's happening, and it just clicks for me. I'm like, this makes sense. But me being me, and also maybe a little bit of an ego, and the pessimistic in me. I'm always trying to find, well, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? And so I'm asking questions. I'm looking at it from maybe a little bit of a pessimistic point of view, and still the traditional finance system in the back of my head. But the great thing is I'm meeting fantastic people along the way, people who, the originators of the Bitcoin Beach project here in El Salvador, people who were really trying to make a change, hearing about Max and Stacy. And I'm starting to listen now. And I'm really putting my guard down, and I want to listen. And I'm focusing more on listening. And I think that's the point where, okay, I got rid of absolutely everything that wasn't Bitcoin related. And I started focusing 100% on learning about Bitcoin because I'm seeing it in front of my eyes. I'm seeing how it's changing people's lives. And I'm seeing this is the heart of people's bank accounts in Canada getting shut down for helping out the trucker convoy. I'm seeing bank runs. I'm seeing this is in the heart of everything. And I'm in Zonte, kind of in my own little bubble, learning about Bitcoin. And so for me, it was kind of just a flip of a switch. I remember just getting rid of absolutely everything and focusing now 100% on Bitcoin.
Wow.
So
I think, and we should, to touch on this, I think it's important when people see the circular economy, specifically Bitcoin Beach, which is sort of the birthplace of the Bitcoin circular economy.
Yeah.
I know there's other bubbles around the world, but they're the ones who really understood that it's not just buy Bitcoin and hold it, but if I spend it in your shop and you spend it at the next shop, that the circular economy is like, because I think, especially when you come from the first world, I've talked to many first world friends, and they see, even those that understand, they see Bitcoin as an asset class. It's a thing like a stock or a bond or real estate, but they're like, how are we gonna? And when you see it, you have to be there and see it. And you see the woman at the pupuseria taking Bitcoin, and then you rent your surfboard and you're like, oh, it really connects.
Yeah. For me, I have this example, and it was real. I remember being here, I think it was 2017, and wanting to buy a coconut. I had Canadian cash on me. I had no American dollars on me, and I had a credit card. And at the time, obviously, before with inflation, now a coconut costs $2 or $3 on the beach. So back then, it was a 50-cent coconut. No vendor is going to take credit card for a 50-cent coconut. It's going to cost the vendor more to accept that payment than it is for than the money she's going to make from it, or he or her. So I strictly remember being like, man, I cannot support this person. Right. I cannot help them out because my Canadian dollars is not going to do anything. She's not going to accept it. There's nowhere that this person can use it to get value back from it. So it's not that acceptable. Acceptability is one of the things about currency. What makes it so valuable? It needs to be acceptable worldwide. The U.S. dollar being the world's reserve currency is the only one they're going to take everywhere. I mean, right now, not everywhere anymore, but most places. And so that's the example where I couldn't support this person's business, even though I wanted to. I wanted that coconut. I was thirsty and wasn't able to. And then fast forward 3 years, this is 2017. So fast forward 5 years later, and I'm in that same scenario. I'm sitting at the corner of El Zonte where Esencia Nativa meets the ocean. And I'm just sitting there, and somebody's selling this Salvadoran fruit called ananona, and I tried it, and it was an amazing fruit. So now I want some. And I asked the person, listen, I don't have any dollars on me. All I have is Bitcoin. I'm trying out this Blink Bitcoin thing. I'm trying out what layer 2 is. Can you sell me one? And he's like, no, I don't really take Bitcoin. I'm like, how much is it? He's like, $1. I'm like, I'll give you 2. He's like, nah, I don't know how to use it. I'll give you 4. And he's like, all right. Opens up his app, opens up his Chivo. I give him $4 for something that he charged $1 for because I wanted it. And I wanted to support him too. And I wanted him to understand, listen, this is what the open market is. Right. This is how it works. You take what people will give you. So I buy the anona, I eat it. This is fantastic. I go back to him. I'm like, can I buy another one? And he kind of, he hesitated again. And I'm like, what'd you do with the $4? He's like, I already changed it to fiat. I was like, that was quick. I ate it in like 5 minutes. Well, did you see how easy it was? He's like, yeah, someone took it from me. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll give you $4 again if you take my Bitcoin. And he took it. Now, I don't know what he did with that Bitcoin now, because I think the price of Bitcoin at the time this was 2022. I don't know, maybe like 40,000. So he'd be up again. But that was the moment where for me it made sense, because I could get what I needed. That person wasn't getting cut, there's no visa fee, there's no conversion fee. And this person was able to accept, and I was able to give them what they wanted, which was money, and I got what I wanted. And there was no intermediary inside there. So that's when it became real to me. And so it was just, from that point on, I'm telling you, 2022, I dove 100% into Bitcoin.
Yeah, and this is, so when Bukele announced in what was it?
It was May 2021, I want to say.
Yeah, it became official in September.
In September, correct.
So where were you when he announced it? Were you already sort of like, I'm all in, or did that kind of help push you?
No, I wasn't all in at the time. I was in El Zonte, and I remember hearing the announcement at Bitcoin Conference 2021, I guess it was, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And I was really proud of it, because it's El Salvador being at the forefront, and my story goes back to, in Toronto, being Salvadoran, even within the Latino community, was always looked down upon. You weren't proud to be Salvadoran, because the first thing they would associate with you is you're a gang member, MS-13, 18 gang, whatever. And so even within the Latino community, it was like, oh yeah, you're Salvadoran, like whatever. There's no history, there's no culture. It's a bad culture. And so I just remember growing up and not that I wasn't proud of where I was from, but I was shy telling people of where I was from. And then here comes Bukele, and here I am learning about Bitcoin, and I'm like, this is it. Financial freedom, financial literacy. This is where Salvadoran people have the choice to make to set themselves apart from everybody else. Because again, it's a choice. You have to decide to want to be into Bitcoin. You don't have to be if you don't want to be, but it's a choice. And so I'm super excited. I think it's a big risk, but also with big risk comes big reward. I'm excited. They announced the date, September 7th, 2021, and I'm looking forward to that date. I leave to go back to Canada, actually, to just sort everything out, and then just haven't been back since. So sort everything out. I arrived back to El Salvador I would say October of 2021, and then haven't been back since. And just been diving deeper and deeper into what Bitcoin is, what its properties are, and also how to educate more Salvadorans on how to use it. Because, Bukele making it law, it was great, because now there's no one stopping you, which is what some of the other governments are doing, like China, ban Bitcoin.
Honduras just passed that crazy law, yeah.
Correct. So I'm proud of the fact that as Salvadorans, we now have the choice and the freedom to be able to choose it if this is what we decide to do. And I think that is something that as Salvadorans we be proud of, but also for me, I take it as a responsibility, So it's been, I remember that day, and I remember meeting people like John from My First Bitcoin, who came to El Salvador because of that announcement. And from that day, honestly, it feels like every day there's more and more Bitcoiners coming to El Salvador. From that moment, I've seen it. I've seen it happening. Like, I've been living it. And just all these smart, intellectual people with good ethics, good morals, hardworking, proof of work people coming here and putting that effort to, as Stacy says, it is make El Salvador the place we want it to be.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody's focusing on. And so that's what I've put my focus on. And that's why I started the Bitcoin hardware store.